Good morning, everyone. My name is Laura Micek, and I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for being here today. I just wanted to kind of share my story with you all, which is a time before there were boot camps. So on the agenda today, I'm going to cover my background, some lessons learned, and impart some advice. So of course, this is going to be more of an abridged talk because it's more of an elevator pitch, not my life story. We don't have half a century to go back through every single thing that I've done, so I'll try to keep it short and sweet. So where did I all start? I've kind of been slowly moving across North Carolina. I started, I was born and raised in Asheville. There wasn't very much of a tech community there as I was growing up. And so really my only kind of advantage there was that my family had a computer, which really sparked my interest in technology in general. So after that, my family actually moved to Charlotte, and that's where I continued my education. And eventually I got offered a job in the Triangle, and that's how I'm joining you today. So it's been kind of a nice little pilgrimage across the state. So my growth has actually never really been linear. It's kind of been more akin to this little squiggly line that you see on the right side. And this in part is due to this concept of intersectionality. So I don't have the time to go into like what all this encompasses, but I can summarize by saying there are all these different kind of factors that end up shaping your, your own unique experience, whether that be advantages or disadvantages. And so I'm going to share with you kind of my unique experience up until this point. So pretty much over the span of my career, it's been pretty much a trial and error kind of process throughout the years. I graduated high school and figured out that I did not have a blueprint that was supposed to be mailed out, I guess, to everyone. I didn't come from a family where higher education was something that was just built into my identity, basically. And so it was really just trying to figure things out and kind of learn along the way. But I was always passionate about technology, and I really enjoyed all the concepts that kind of go along with that. So problem solving and kind of figuring things out, that's all what drew me into technology in general. So some of the things that I didn't list out like every single thing I've ever done in my life because it would be a way longer list than this. But I kind of wanted to show some of the successes and failures throughout this trial and error phase. So the first thing I did when I graduated from high school was I ended up going to a trade school. And from there, I was really trying to figure out like what specifically I wanted to get into technology wise, because it's a giant field. Like there are so many aspects that touches the word technology. So just trying to kind of like map that out was really my first priority. And so through that, I actually got the opportunity to have a corporate technical internship that kind of helped me define what that was that I was really more interested in. And that's where I really got exposure to what development was. And that's actually what ended up making me come to the conclusion that the trade school was actually not really helping me toward that goal. And so I ended up dropping out of trade school. And at that point, I was like, well, I don't have the skill set yet to be able to really carry myself. So let's figure out like, most people went to like a university of some sort. Let's see like what that is. And so I tried to go down that route. Unfortunately, I really didn't have the things they were looking for either at the time. And so, but they did in their letter to me was very considerate and said, you might want to consider going to a community college first to, try to take some classes that will help you in order to reapply at a later time. So I was very thankful that, it wasn't just like, sorry, you're not here. It was more of a process of, giving me a next step, which I was very thankful for. And so I then started at a community college per that recommendation. I really enjoyed my time there. It was a really great kind of program, but it was really just kind of a general associates kind of program. So it was really just getting some of those kind of elective classes out of the way, which actually did help me later on. But I ended up getting a full-time position while I was in community college, and that kind of gave me a little bit more experience as far as what kind of other jobs were out there while I was kind of going on this learning journey. And so after I graduated from the community college, there was some other stuff that I decided like it was way too long. But in summary, it ended up I wasn't able to really get the types of development positions that I really wanted to get into. And so that's when I decided that I really needed to break out of this kind of trial and error process. And the way that I figured that I would do that is by like choosing a career path. And so again, I had no concept of like how to even get on a career path because again, there was no map of any sort to guide me. So I started to look at positions that interested me and see kind of like what the requirements were and like what they were looking into as far as candidates for these positions. And so going back to this whole topic of boot camps, before there were boot camps, actually there were a lot less options. You could either go the self-taught route, which up until that point I was already kind of doing on my own, but wasn't really kind of working in my favor. And so I ended up going back to, after I got all the credits I needed to then reapply, I then actually got accepted into the University of Charlotte. So the fun fact out of this while I was researching for this presentation was that boot camps actually opened up at that like pinnacle point where I was kind of trying to plan out like what I should do next. But I don't think it was very like highly advertised. I think it was just like in the very early stages of kind of getting started and starting up and stuff like that. So I was really kind of limited on what I felt like were my real options. And so I ended up going back to the university route and managing to actually get in that time. And the cool thing about taking this route was even before I graduated from the computer science program, I was able to actually talk to a bunch of companies, and all those blockers that were there before were no longer there. People were more interested in having discussions with me and actually kind of figuring out what would be the best fit for me. And that's when I was able to get into a software engineer role. But all along, I had always been like in that space, having these different types of roles that I was writing code in, but I couldn't quite technically call myself, the software engineer at that point. But now that, I've kind of learned and grown and kind of changed my even outlook on like what development, like where that actually starts. I think that's really helped kind of contribute how I even help others even talk about getting into this field. So I think as a whole, it's kind of helped me to be able to even help other people that may have been in like similar situations where they didn't have kind of the resources to understand like the different steps in order to get into this path. So along those lines, I put together a list of kind of some of the lessons learned along the way. So one of the top ones that I have listed here is do your research. This is really important no matter like if you're researching a company or researching a different like a role of some sort. It's just really important to do your due diligence, to put time into like finding out as much information as you can. And then that kind of falls along, these are all kind of similar, and they're all kind of contributing to the fact that you have to keep doing certain things to kind of grow yourself in your career. So my next point is learning never stops. It's not one of those things where it's like, okay, I learned a skill, I am the best at the skill. And it's really one of those things where you learn a skill set and say, all right, what's next? What can I be looking at or learning to help me in my role and to help me grow in my profession? So the great thing about technology is that this is a field that's constantly changing. So there's always something new to learn, or like a new field or area to kind of like see if that's a new avenue that you can go into. So it's kind of a nice ability that's kind of built into the technology field. And then my next point is networking is continuous. It's not just a checkbox that you say, all right, I attended a speed networking event this year, I have networked. It's definitely something that you should continue to do throughout the year. Go to events, talk to other professionals, see what other people are doing. It kind of just helps not only grow your knowledge of your community, it also helps you say like, oh, I have a particular project I'm working on and someone else has worked on a similar one. It gives you the ability to kind of compare notes and just talk to other people that are in your field. Which brings me to another point. Reflection is something that you should do often. I personally try to do I set aside a day every month where I just take some time to reflect on what I accomplished for the month, and then make sure that I'm on track for the goals that I have set for the whole year. So just maybe just like either put something on your calendar just to make sure that you can take some time and reflect on some of the things that you've done so that you remember to stay on track. So part of this thing of reflection is also realizing that stagnation kind of happens sometimes. So I've been on several teams where you get this very continuous pattern of like, oh, I'm doing a similar thing, and over time you become an expert at it, but at the same time you might not be doing other things that help you grow. And so it's important to kind of reflect on what you're actually accomplishing in your role and make sure that you stay kind of aware that while something may be a comfortable fit, like you have a good team or something, it may not be contributing to you actually growing your role. So just kind of do a self-check to make sure that you're not just kind of becoming too comfortable with your skill set. And then something I also like to highlight is sometimes failure is necessary because it helps us grow. No one likes to fail, but it's one of those things that really helps you to kind of gauge success in general, because if you don't fail, like you need that kind of balance to really show like how you've grown throughout your career. And it is really a good learning experience as well. So here's some advice I've also put together for anyone that's looking to get into technology in general. So definitely look for companies that reflect your own values. So some of the things that I really looked for when I was hunting for jobs was, are these companies involved in their community? Do they invest in their employees? And are they interested in allowing for growth? And then the last important thing, which should be probably the first important thing, is also work-life balance, because you don't want to be, going into a role where you're just constantly just doing nothing but work and not having a break, which also can contribute to things like burnout as well. Another piece of advice is don't compare yourself to anyone else. I know this can be really hard to do. When I first started out, I was constantly doing this. However, it's not something that's really productive, because it really, there's no really good way to say like these things equate exactly to these set of things. So it's important more to like reflect inwards and say, am I providing value? Am I growing my skill set? Am I being am I like producing things that I'm proud of, basically. So don't so much look at other people, just look inward at yourself and make sure that you're really just making sure that you're where you need to be. Which is also a good segue into the fact that your work is not a race. I know I didn't really mean to make this rhyme, but definitely do things at your own pace. This is important because there are people at different stages of their life. So some people may have more time than others. And if we're all trying to like keep up with each other, then, you know, it'll get to the point where you're spending so much time just trying to do that. And it can lead to, like I was mentioning, burnout and all these other not so great things that you don't want to promote as a culture. So definitely just kind of work through your stuff without, again, comparing to others. It's really important just to focus on your own work and make sure that you're providing value. And then another good piece of advice is don't be your own blocker. So when I was going through school, a lot of times I would hear this, but I'm not good at blank. So in the case of people that were really interested in becoming developers, one of the common ones I heard was, but I'm not good at math. But this is really one of those things where it's like they were blocking themselves from getting into the field that they thought was interesting because they thought that they couldn't do it based on this one particular subject. I will be the first to admit I am not good at math at all, but I still managed to get through, you know, the math barrier. And it's not really about like being good at that particular thing. It's more about knowing that you can start out and have that feeling of, oh, I don't know what I'm doing, but slowly like make progress toward your goal and try not to have these kind of negative emotions about like, oh, I can't do it because I don't have this particular thing. You won't ever get to that particular skill set unless you make that first step in trying to move toward your goal. So definitely don't try to get in your own way by saying, oh, I can't do that particular technology or whatever, just because you're not good at anything particular. You don't develop a skill set unless you practice. So you really have to make that first step in order to try to get past, you know, this being your blocker for getting into something. So my next piece of advice is venture out of your comfort zone. So in order to really grow and try to kind of go beyond where you're currently at, you should really try to aim for things that make you uncomfortable. Again, if you kind of stay in the same roles and go into this like stagnation kind of scenario, you're not really doing that. So it's really important to kind of look at things that make you uncomfortable. For example, speaking at a conference, and try to like do things that will get you out of that comfort zone and hopefully, you know, progress you in a particular skill set. So one of the last things I want to leave you with here is definitely get involved in your community. There are tons of projects out there for all kinds of different skill set levels. And the really great thing about this is there's tons of things you'll even learn about at this conference today, like open source tools that you can use to build these cool solutions for people in your community. So there's tons of things out there, lots of nonprofits that need help in the technology space. So definitely look what's out there to kind of break you into like a role that will help you toward being successful, basically. And that's it for me. Thank you so much for attending my talk. If you want to get in touch with me, I have LinkedIn and Twitter. Again, I really appreciate everyone coming out today. Enjoy the rest of the conference.